5 minutes and 55 seconds. They said that was too long for a song. But whoever said that ignored the genius of one of the greatest bands of all time. With just one song, it can take you from melancholy to euphoria in a fascinating and mysterious spectacle that tells a distressing story worthy of a movie. I'm Guilherme, and today I'm going to decipher Bohemian Rhapsody by the band Queen, here on the Decipher Hits channel. It doesn't matter what your favorite music genre is, Bohemian Rhapsody is unlike anything you've ever heard in your life. This masterpiece awakens a unique and inexplicable feeling in anyone who hears it for the first time. And one of the main reasons for that is its peculiar structure. As the title itself reveals, Bohemian Rhapsody is a rhapsody. In other words, it's a musical piece made up of seemingly independent parts. But together they tell a surprising story. And here's the thing, it's not enough to just look at the translation, because the lyrics are some of the most enigmatic ever created. But don't worry, that's exactly why Decipher Hits exists. It's much easier to understand the lyrics if we picture Bohemian Rhapsody as a play or as a classic night at the opera, just as the album title suggests. We can divide the song into 6 acts, where each one features an instrumental progression that matches perfectly with the story told in the lyrics, revealing the deepest fears and secrets of the brilliant and eccentric lead singer of the band, Freddie Mercury.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy?
The first part of this song works as the foundation of a building, starting off very softly, using very little sound. But even in this minimalism, we can already notice the richness of this song, which in the music video seems to be the whole band singing in chorus. In reality, it's just Freddie Mercury's voice, reflecting the questions of a confused protagonist about something mysterious that's happening to him. The echoing tone of the choral sound evokes the feeling of a lucid dream, as if he is awakening to a new and unknown reality.
Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality.
This reality is inevitable, but so frightening that he feels cornered and pressured, as if something has collapsed on him. But deep down, he knows what he needs to do. Open his eyes and face his new reality.
Open your eyes, look up to the sky.
However, he still lacks the courage to do so the feeling of helplessness and powerlessness consumes him when he remembers that he is just an ordinary human being who has ups and downs and whose life is as fragile and fleeting as anyone else's. And that's precisely why he recognizes his insignificance in the face of the relentless force of nature.
Anyway the wind blows.
Here represented not only by the wind, but also by death, which leads us to the second act.
Just killed a man.
The protagonist, who was previously confused, confesses to his mother that he killed a man and that now he awaits her judgment. In the whole song, this is one of the lines that generated the most speculation and theories from fans. Although the final composition was a collaborative effort by the band, the lyrics, and therefore their true meaning, came entirely from the brilliant mind of Freddie Mercury. He always said that Bohemian Rhapsody was about relationships, and he never confirmed that he was talking about himself in this classic. However, the truth is that when we discover the whole story behind this song, it's impossible not to relate it to the conflicts of an artist who was far ahead of his time, and who, because of that, had to fight certain battles that were hard to win. The verse, "Mama, I just killed a man," came up at the end of the 60s when Freddie wrote the song, which was going to be called the Cowboy Song, but ended up becoming this part of Bohemian Rhapsody. It's precisely this verse that is the key to understanding the meaning of the rest of the song. And one of the most widely accepted theories is that the singer was referring to his own sexuality. Freddie Mercury was raised in a traditional family from a region of Islamic influence in East Africa called Zanzibar. And although it's now public that Freddie had relationships with both men and women, He always tried to dodge the subject when asked in interviews, and he never officially admitted to being bisexual. So it's clear that his sexuality was a burden he carried, especially when we remember that we're talking about a time when topics like the LGBT community weren't as openly discussed as they are today. So for someone to come out as gay or bisexual was considered almost a crime by most people. And in Freddie's case, this could have serious consequences for both his personal life and his artistic career. Therefore, the protagonist's confession to his mother may reflect a conversation that most LGBT people need to have with their parents at some point in their lives. And for many people, embracing their true identity means killing their old self. In fact, this isn't just a fan theory. Many people close to Freddie have already expressed the same view. While guitarist Brian May stated this in a lighter way, saying he believes the lyrics talk about the traumas in Mercury's life. Because Freddie was a very complex person, musician Tim Rice, who worked on some Queen songs, was more direct. There's a very clear message. It's Freddie coming out as gay. It's as if he killed the old Freddie, the straight person who existed before. He destroyed the man he was trying to be, and now it's him, trying to live as a new Freddie. The opera part shows him still haunted by what he did and by who he is. Every time I hear the song, I think of him trying to get rid of one Freddie and embrace the other, even after all these years. Killing his old self for Freddie wasn't just about his sexuality. He had a unique and eccentric personality. He liked to wear more extravagant clothes in his performances, living like a true bohemian artist, which also explains the title of this song. Born as Farrokh Bulsara, he decided to change his name to better fit his reality and identity. He already used the nickname in his youth, however, the surname Mercury came from a song he wrote himself, a My Fairy Cane.
Mother Mercury, look what they've done to me.
And after the protagonist reveals his crime to his mother, he begins to lament his cruel fate that is approaching. Even overwhelmed by the fear of the consequences of his actions, feeling chills down his spine and pain in his body, he says goodbye for the last time, and he decides to leave everything behind, moving forward to face the truth and receive his final judgment.
Gotta leave you all behind and face.
In other words, he is about to show the world who he really is. But this causes him immense fear to the point where he screams to everyone that he doesn't want to die. At the same time, he feels guilty for his own nature, wishing he had never even been born.
Sometimes wish I'd never been born at all.
And it's at this moment that the third act begins, which is summed up in Brian May's iconic guitar solo. Music. This solo translates the character's explosion of feelings and represents the passage from one state of being to another. In addition, it marks the transition to one of the most striking and enigmatic parts of the song, the opera. Music. At first glance, this section may seem like a bunch of meaningless words, but Fred was a big fan of opera and knew exactly what he was doing. Here, the narrative of the story continues, and we can see this part as the arrival of what the protagonist feared most, both in life and in death. His judgment. Music.
I see a little silhouette of a man.
Fred's silhouette against the stage lights represents the emergence of a new man, who is now called Scaramouche by the people.
Scaramouche.
Scaramouche, will you do the fandango?
Scaramouche is a character from the comedy The Lard, a branch of Italian theater from the 15th century. He was portrayed as a trickster clown, clever and also cowardly, which explains the fear of thunder and lightning in the next line, an analogy to the protagonist's fear of being judged. And although fandango is just the name of a traditional Spanish dance, here this word has a very different meaning.
Já que os ingleses usavam a expressão ramp fandango para se referir ao movimento feito pelas pernas de alguém que está sendo executado na forca.
In other words, they're basically asking if the protagonist will be hanged. Right after that, the name of a historical figure who also challenged conservative thinking, and was severely judged for it as mentioned. Music. Galileo Galilei was an astronomer who argued that the Earth revolved around the sun, and because of that, he was threatened with death by the Inquisition in the 17th century, having to deny his own discoveries to save his life. Many say that Fred included Galileo in the song as a way to pay tribute to the guitarist Brian, who has a PhD in astrophysics. In addition, they also praise Figaro, which is a classical opera composed by Mozart. And faced with his judgment, the protagonist begins to belittle himself, begging for mercy.
I'm just a poor boy, nobody loves me.
But I'm just a poor boy, nobody loves me. At first, he even manages to convince some people to defend him.
He's just a poor boy from a poor family.
He's just a poor boy from a poor family. Spare his life from this monstrosity. Still begging for mercy, he asks if they're going to let him go, but he gets a harsh answer.
Oh, will you let me go?
Bismillah. No, we will not let you go.
Bismillah, no, we will not let you go. Repeated several times while he and his supporters beg in vain to let him go. Bismillah is an Arabic term that means, in the name of Allah, a common expression in Islam, the predominant religion in Farrok's homeland. In other words, by killing his former self and recognizing his true identity, in addition to human punishment represented by the gallows, he also fears suffering divine punishment.
Beelzebub has a devil put aside for me.
Beelzebub is one of the 7 princes of hell, according to Christianity. In other words, the protagonist feels that what he did was considered so heinous that he will be cursed for eternity. And it's exactly at that moment that he decides to change the game. The explosive sounds of the drums and guitar bring the opera to a close and perfectly match the protagonist's radical change in attitude. So, do you think you can stone me and spit in my eye? So, do you think you can love me and leave me to die? Stoning is a type of punishment that still occurs today in certain religions that preach love. But here, he stops begging and starts bravely challenging those who are judging him. No, you can't do this to me. I have to get out of here. I have to get out of here now. Like the phoenix, the protagonist rises again in these verses in a glorious way. He manages to overcome his anguish and finally openly embraces his new identity. And that brings us to the final act. The protagonist finishes by reciting the same lines from the beginning of the song, but this time they seem to have a different meaning.
Nada realmente importa.
Everyone can see. Anyway, the wind will blow. If at first these lines expressed fear and oppression, here they indicate a feeling of peace and liberation, of someone who decided to acknowledge it. It would be to embrace your true nature, regardless of the intimidating judgment that may exist. Just like with any song, every interpretation is valid, and this was just one among many possible ones. The fact is that Bohemian Rhapsody is not just a magnificent work of art, but also an eternal proof of the genius of the band queen and the late extraordinary Fred Mercury. If you've watched this far, you must have really enjoyed it. So if you want to support us, just click the join button. I'll stop here. Thank you very much for staying with us and see you next time.